Good evening. My name is Jennifer Schlitt, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area. I welcome you to tonight's forum featuring candidates for Ann Arbor City Council Ward 5, Chip Smith and Ali Remlawi. The candidates will be on the ballot in the general election on Tuesday, November 7th. We are broadcasting from the studios of CTN in Ann Arbor. The League of Women Voters is pleased to sponsor these forums. The League is a nonpartisan, civic, and political organization that encourages informed and active participation of all citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and seeks to strengthen and broaden knowledge about our form of government and democracy. The League does not support candidates or parties. We do take stands, however, on issues we have studied. One of the League's important goals is to assist voters in making informed decisions about polls. Thus, we bring you tonight's program. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters are managing tonight's forum. Our moderator this evening is Dharma Ackman. Dharma will explain the format from here.
Great. So it's my pleasure to introduce the candidates for City Council representing the 5th Ward, Mr. Ali Remlawi and Mr. Chip Smith. The format for tonight is as follows. Each candidate will give an opening statement of up to 1 minute. Each candidate will also have a closing statement of up to 2 minutes. In between, I will ask questions that came from the Ann Arbor community. We received 63 questions for this forum, and we really want to thank the community, the Civ City Initiative, students from Ann Arbor Pioneer High School, and members of the League for submitting their questions. While we try to include as many as possible, our time with the candidates is limited. So each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to a question. We have timers who will hold up their paddles to let you know when there's 15 seconds remaining. And then if you run out, they will hold up a stop sign to let you know that your time is up. So candidates, please stop when indicated so that you both have the opportunity to participate in the time allotted. The order of speaking was determined by a drawing before we began. Opening first will be Mr. Remlawi, followed by Mr. Smith. And for the closing statement, Mr. Smith will be going first, and then followed by Mr. Remlawi. So we're ready for your opening statement, Mr. Remlawi.
Thank you. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum. I'd also like to thank Councilmember Chip Smith for his service to our community these last couple of years. My name is Ali Remlawi, and I am running as an independent for City Council in Ward 5. As an owner of a local downtown business for 25 years and a resident for 17, I understand the issues facing residents, other small business owners, and people who work in our city. They believe City Council is not addressing their concerns with matters that affect their quality of life. I am running to bring a different perspective to City Council, one that represents the will of the community. I would like to shift Council's attention to rebalance our priorities so that they reflect the true wishes of the people of Ann Arbor.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Smith.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Councilmember Chip Smith, the Democratic nominee for the 5th Ward City Council seat in the November 7th general election. I'm an urban planner by trade, and I'm a 22-year resident of the 5th Ward. And I'm very proud to represent the 5th Ward on council, but I'm perhaps most proud to be known as the husband of Courtney and the father of 2 wonderful girls. And I mention this because Ann Arbor is a special place for me and my family, as it is for most of you watching at home. Keeping those things that make our city so great takes a lot of work. It takes working with those with different ideas. It takes building coalitions and consensus and keeping an open mind to things. It takes an even temperament. In the end, it's about making Ann Arbor special, not only for current generations, but making sure it will be for future ones as well. And that's why I'm running for re-election. I've been working hard to make sure Ann Arbor is as wonderful for my future grandchildren as it is for me and my contemporaries. And that's why I'm asking for your vote on November 7th.
Okay. And the first question will be going to you, Mr. Smith. What's your position on a city income tax?
That's a great question because we just had a work session on that at City Council. One of the things that we have to grapple with in this city is the fact that our expenses in our general fund increase 2.5% a year, and yet our revenues can only increase at 2% a year. So that puts us in a place where we have to look for additional ways to generate revenue just to continue to provide the level of services we're already providing. One of the things that we asked the city staff, financial staff, to put together was a look at, could we do a local income tax and what would be the impacts to members of the community? And we had that presentation a couple weeks ago, and I think we should always be looking at different ideas to see if they work, but to summarize what we learned is, it costs about $10 million to staff up to get about $12 million total in revenue. I think what concerns me about a city income tax is they did a very quick breakdown as to who would be the biggest beneficiaries of changing so that we didn't have a general operating millage and had a local income tax. And while we would make a significant amount of revenue from commuters, there would still be a considerable burden on current residents now, and it would be corporations that saw the biggest benefit. And that to me says that that's not quite where it needs to be for it to be representative of the values of the community.
Okay. Same question to you, Mr. Ramlawi. What is your position on a city income tax?
Well, I believe it's a regressive form of tax. And although we have challenges funding our city government with continuous cuts from the state government, I believe it's not the right approach to take. It is a volatile way of funding city government. We have a pretty predictable and safe and tried and true method of collecting taxes through property taxes to fund city operations. And so that by itself is a big cause of alarm. I think we should be having a more consistent and conservative way of operating our city government and funding it. Furthermore, I believe as an employer, we become less attractive to people who come and work in our city. It's a challenge these days to find people to come and work. It's a very tight labor market. And I think it'll be just another con for someone who is looking to Ann Arbor to come and work. I don't believe it's gonna, another issue that I have is that there is a lot of renters in Ann Arbor. And I don't think landlords are gonna pass through the 6 mil reduction that they're gonna get in their property taxes to the renters. Just like in 1969 and in 1972 when the voters voted it down, I don't see a reason today why we should vote for a city income tax.
Okay, and you will be answering the next question first, Mr. Ramlawi. Do you support the November 7th countywide tax proposal to fund public safety and mental health services? Why or why not? And do you agree with the way the council has indicated it will spend the city's proceeds from this tax?
That's a great question. I think City Council has put the ballot in jeopardy. I think we have a crisis on our hands with mental health, with the opioid epidemic that is ripping through our nation and through our county. We have a state that is bent on cutting funding. I support the mental health ballot and initiative, but I do not support the way the majority on council has planned to spend the money. First of all, it hasn't even been voted on, and I think it's a sign of poor governance when you plan to spend money for something that hasn't been voted on. And furthermore, the voters, when they go into the ballot box on November 7th, are voting for mental health. They're not voting for climate action. They're not voting for affordable housing. They're not voting for pedestrian safety. They're voting for mental health. So I think a lot of folks now might second guess voting yes, whereas before they would have voted yes for it. But now their tax dollars are not going to go to mental health, and I don't think that is the way government should lead.
Same question to you, Mr. Smith. It's a long one, I will repeat it. Do you support the November 7th countywide tax proposal to fund public safety and mental health services? Why or why not? And do you agree with the way the council has indicated it will spend the city's proceeds from this tax?
Yes, I do support the millage. I would point out, just without getting too much into the weeds, the way that this is split up is that 38% of the revenue will go to community mental health, 38% will go to the sheriff's office, and 24% of the millage proceeds will be rebated to communities that already have their own police department, 7 jurisdictions within the county. And yes, I think that the way that we handled this was exactly right. I was proud to be a co-sponsor of our use resolution because I'm glad we were able to act quickly and be clear about how we intended to use this. The use resolution is about being transparent about what that money would go to and how it's tied to both public safety and mental health. You know, our use resolution assigns 40% of this to affordability. Affordable housing is a huge part of the mental health equation. Climate change, climate programs is 40% of what we would use, what we get back for that. That to me is a public safety issue, is making sure that we can withstand the impacts of more frequent and intense storms. And then finally, pedestrian and bicycle safety is a matter of public safety. And as people look at our community, 91% of people in Ann Arbor feel safe here, 97% feel safe in their neighborhoods, crime's at an all-time low. That doesn't mean that we should be using it to hire more police.
Okay, next question to you, Mr. Smith. Building density in downtown areas and creating walkable urban places have been major policy goals of the mayor and the majority on council. What have been the benefits and harmful consequences of this push in your view? And what grade would you give city leaders in this push for density downtown and in creating walkable urban places?
Well, I would take people back to, you know, the late 90s and early 2000s when we passed the Greenbelt millage, and part of that discussion was to create living opportunities for 10,000 people downtown, and that was a widely discussed process and very important. And when I moved here in 1995, there was an awful lot of vacancy on Main Street. There was a lot of turnover. I frankly think that in the 22 years I've been here, you know, things have gotten a lot better. When I think about creating walkable urbanism, we've done a lot of good things downtown. The thing that I hear most often from people is that we've got a lot of ugly buildings that have been built, and I agree with them. And one of the things that we did to address that was pass some downtown design guidelines that require different kinds of materials and transparency that enhance the walkability. But when you want to talk about density, if we don't want to have density downtown, we have to create it other places. And that's something I've been working very hard to do. The Planning Commission will bring forward a transit-oriented development ordinance in the spring that looks to create some of the walkable urbanism in other parts of the community along big transit lines. And I think that if we are simply to say we don't want anything else downtown, then we've got to figure out where that density and urbanism can be created.
Okay, same question to you, Mr. Ramlawi. Building density in downtown areas and creating walkable urban places have been major policy goals of the mayor and the majority on council. What have been the benefits and harmful consequences of this push in your view? And what grade would you give city leaders in this push for density downtown and in creating walkable urban places?
Well, I think we can all agree on a walkable urban space. The big push, though, has had a lot of unintended consequences. We have built housing only for the top earning income residents and individuals. This has put a big strain on the workforce housing stock. For every residence that you build of one of these higher level income earners or a retiree, they're going to require services, and we have not provided enough housing for the workforce housing for people who work in the service industry to help support those new residents in Ann Arbor. So we have now a situation in downtown where it's become the least affordable it's been in modern time. So we have a place where it's less diversified culturally and economically, and I don't think that's the most healthy approach for a city. I think we need to shift our focus on just increasing the tax base with these large developments and giving subsidies to help build these developments, subsidies and variances on parking. And we are essentially subsidizing these developments by providing the parking for them, by not requiring them to put the parking that they would have to build otherwise. So it's becoming less affordable.
Thank you. Okay, you will answer the next question first, Mr. Ramlawi. Do you support the Treeline Allen Creek Urban Trail project? If so, how should the city fund the estimated $55 million cost? What other projects or services should be put on hold in order to fund the tree line?
Well, I'm an avid cyclist, and of course, I live on the west side of town. When the discussion came out about an urban trail system, with everyone that I know, is for it. But as the process went along, the price tag kept getting higher. We have a price tag now of $57 million, which just seems completely astonishing to me, even behind something that I find to be supportive of and I would find use in using. I'm not sure how it got to be $57 million, and I'm not sure how we're going to fund it. There's been ideas of crowdfunding and philanthropy and this and that. The university is supposed to get behind it. I don't see that happening. I would like to scale the project down to something that's much more manageable and we can digest it and get something in place and then work on building it up to where it's been proposed to be at $57 million. I don't know how we're going to get $57 million to build this. We have a dioxin plume not far away that's threatening the health of residents, and I think we need to focus on the responsibilities of city government and not be distracted by shiny new objects in the room. And it'd be nice to get a trail system in place. We need to start with something that's much more modest and then build with time, because I don't know where this money is going to come from.
Okay, Mr. Smith, same question to you. Do you support the Treeline Allen Creek Urban Trail project? If so, how should the city fund the estimated $55 million cost? And what other projects or services should be put on hold in order to fund the tree line?
So I'm a big supporter of this, as I do believe that this is a crucial piece of our non-motorized infrastructure. But when we talk about how do we pay for this, we've talked about an aspirational project, but we've also talked about ways to phase things in over a long period of time. I think ultimately we can't stop divert money from anything that we're doing now to put into this trail construction, because we are at the point where we can't cut any more out of local government. So it does become paramount to find partnerships to complete some of these things, to work with MDOT to complete the proposed part of the bridges over North Main Street. I think we absolutely have to be creative in how we do this. We have a couple, 415 West Washington, 721 North Main, and the First and William parking area are all assets that can help us move progress on the trail. But there's also ways that we implement some of these connections that are not building bridges in the first phase of things. Some of it is acquiring property. Some of it is putting in separated paths where we can, where the railroad will be. But I don't say let's dial back our ambition. I think we need to have this aspiration out there and have something to work toward, and certainly to raise money for.
Okay. The next question, and this I think will be the last question of the night before closing statements, will go to you, Mr. Smith. Do you favor the city taking on a debt to build a train station? What form would the debt take?
Well, this is a pretty simple answer for me. Is for a train station to happen, three things need to happen in my mind. And if one of them doesn't happen, then we don't get a train station. Is number one, voters have to approve the location. That's part of this process. That's what the previous city council had set up. And if voters say no, then there's no point in going forward with this. Number two, the federal government needs to provide that 80% of that funding to do it. And then number three, as our city CFO made very clear in our presentation for the work session, we don't have the money to do this. And I don't necessarily support bonding this, So I would say that the University of Michigan and the private sector needs to step up and come up with that 20% match for us. Because there is going to be a lot of people that benefit from this parking structure that goes with the station, that those actors have to help us shoulder the burden. We're providing the land, we're doing the road and sewer and infrastructure parts of this as part of what we normally do. I think that it's appropriate for us to look to other agencies, other individuals, and the university to be our partners in this, and that if we can't bring all those people together, then it's not something that is affordable and doable here.
Okay, same question to you, Mr. Ramlawi. Do you favor the city taking on a debt to build a train station, and what form should the debt take?
Well, there's always, there's debt, taking on debt requires timing. During times of recession, governments should take on debt to help stimulate the economy and put people to work, and then times of bubbles, perhaps we should dial back and not inflate the situation. As my opponent just said, it's going to come down to the voters as to where the location will be and whether the city will take on debt to build it. The station in its current form needs rehabilitation. It does not address our current needs and our future needs. So something does need to happen. If it is going to be moved over to the Fuller Park, you have a lot of issues there. First, it's parkland. Secondly, I don't see the University of Michigan getting behind it as much as it should be if it's going to be servicing the patients and the workers who work for the health systems. So it really needs to come down to the details. And unfortunately, council hasn't been very transparent with the whole process. It's been going on now for 3 or 4 years. Residents and people in the community have not had a whole lot of information given to them. So unfortunately right now you do not have a clear picture as to what the costs are, where the costs are coming, who's going to pay for it, whether it's going to be a federal match or not. Frankly, we just don't know enough about it. But it all really depends, it all comes down to the voters.
Thank you. And we're ready for your closing statements. Mr. Smith, you're first. You have 2 minutes.
That's quick. Thanks. I'm going to end by repeating what I've been saying to people out on the doorstep, and that's that expertise matters and temperament matters, and keeping an open mind to different possibilities matters. We all want Ann Arbor to stay the place that we love, and we want to make sure that those things that make us love the city which are unique to all of us, are kept as part of our civic DNA, if you will. And that's why expertise matters. It matters because knowing how to get things done is half the battle. Knowing how to help folks with the little things that are so important to their everyday lives makes a meaningful difference in somebody's quality of life. Skill, expertise, and temperament, these things matter because they're crucial for effective government. Just look at Washington and Lansing, where there's a soul-crushing lack of these characteristics. Now is the time for us to be able to fill the void left by failures at the national and state level. And I'm proud to be a representative of the 5th Ward, and I will continue to work every day to do more than just listen, but to get things done for you. And I'm running for re-election to make sure Ann Arbor is a remarkable place for everyone. To do this, we need to address affordability. We need to continue to improve the provision of basic services. We need to keep working on making our transportation network safe and accessible for everyone. And we need always to be looking forward and funding programs that reduce our emissions and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Lastly, we have a responsibility to future generations that we make sure Ann Arbor is as special for them as it is for us. I'm Councilmember Chip Smith, Democratic nominee for the 5th Ward Ann Arbor City Council seat, and I'd be honored to have your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Okay. Now for your closing statement, Mr. Ramlawi.
I strongly believe City Council needs to become more diverse. And in doing so, it will lead to a more inclusive discussion that will address social justice issues through economic means. We must restructure our priorities so that they reflect the true needs of our citizens and foster a vibrant and diverse community. One of the biggest challenges facing Ann Arbor today is housing that is affordable for its workforce. We cannot achieve our full economic potential and sustain a healthy cultural diversity without addressing this crisis. This will require us changing the focus and putting our resources behind making affordable housing a priority for Ann Arbor's workforce. I will take a practical approach on decisions, one that listens to residents on matters that pertain to all of us, whether it's safe neighborhoods and streets, clean air and clean water, and a sustainable and inclusive city. Through this new perspective, our city will achieve the cultural and economic diversity that once defined Ann Arbor. I will ask the difficult questions on council by challenging the status quo and working towards finding the best solutions with what our community has to offer. People have the answers and solutions can be found. I remember a time when other communities looked to Ann Arbor as an example to follow. I would like to return our city to that level of leadership once again. For more information about my campaign, please visit my website at voteali.org. And once again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, members in the audience, and Councilmember Smith. Democracy only works when we all participate and openly discuss the issues. Remember to vote November 7th, vote for your community, and vote for Ali.
And that concludes our forum tonight. I want to thank both of the candidates for participating in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you to the candidates for participating, to all those who contributed questions, and finally, our partner CTN for making this program possible. These forums will be rebroadcast on Channel 19 a number of times between now and the election. They are also available on demand for streaming on your computer or your smartphone. Go to our website, lwvannarbor.org, and look for the link to the programs. Please urge your friends and fellow residents to watch these forums as well. For additional nonpartisan and dispassionate information on candidates and ballot issues, go to vote411.org, the League's voter resource guide covering local, state, and federal candidates, as well as current proposals that will appear on your ballot. Make your plan now and be sure to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Good night.